they're almost as pretty as the flowers. And the rose hip tends to be very high in vitamin C. And if you're looking for a natural source of vitamin C, you'll see this in Whole Foods in some places, where the vitamin C is actually derived from the rose seed pod, the rose hips. But again, it's just variety by variety. Some of them make almost no rose hip. Some of them, virtually every flower makes a good size hip, and it's just knowing your variety.
How big is Julia's child?
Plant or flower?
Plant.
Plant is going to be probably about 4 feet by 4 feet.
Smaller than the one over there.
Smaller than Belinda's Dream. Probably 2/3 the size. My Belinda's Dream is about this tall. My Julia Child is about this tall. And that's after I've been in the ground 2 or 3 years.
I'm partial.
Wonder why. Okay, so choose your sizes carefully, and remember, if you're looking, people are always looking for hedges. Why anybody plants a ligustrum hedge, I don't know. If you've got room for it, plant a butterfly rose. If you've got good sun, they're dense enough that you've got the visual protection. They're thorny enough that nobody in their right mind is going to try to walk through it. If they do, you can follow them by the trail of blood on the ground after they come out on the other side, and you get flowers like 10 months out of the year. I mean, roses should not be limited to rose gardens anymore. You can use roses throughout the landscape. You can use roses as accent plants. You can use roses as hedges. Just about any place that you want to find a plant to fill, there'll probably be some variety of rose that would be a pretty choice to put in there. So I'm not much into making rose gardens, but I sure do like using roses in the landscape because they're so pretty. Yes, ma'am.
Is the butterfly rose fragrant?
Mildly. Does not have a strong fragrance.
Okay. Julia?
Yes. Real nice fragrance on Julia Child. And again, it's weird. I've seen Julia Child grafted and Julia Child on its own roots. On its own roots, it seems to have more fragrance. I have no idea why. Okay, let's talk about the problems that you will run into in growing roses.
Like black spot.
Like black spot.
The first time I've had any was this season.
Roses are susceptible to some degree to 2 different fungus diseases. With healthy plants, neither disease is going to be life-threatening to the rose, but it can make for ugly foliage. Black spot is a disease, is a fungus disease, that, as the name implies, shows up as black spots on the leaves. I would be a little suspicious of a rose bush that didn't have a black spot, because that would tell me it had been so heavily chemically sprayed that it was probably pretty toxic to be anywhere around it. And if you're into using all the fancy big-name chemicals, I will warn you, the most common fungicide out there is called Funginex by Ortho. And it does control fungus, but if you get it in your eyes, you're blind. It's as simple as that. That's not in the big print anywhere in there. You'll find it in the fine print. If you want to give your roses the best chance to be free of black spot, number one, feed them and water them properly. A healthy plant is much, much less susceptible to black spot fungus disease to begin with. Cornmeal, whole ground cornmeal, is a wonderful fungicide. Well, in and of itself, cornmeal doesn't do anything to control fungus. But there is a fungus that grows on cornmeal that in turn destroys fungi. And if you want to, the way that black spot gets on so many roses, it gets on the leaves and the leaves fall on the ground, and the spore by which the black spot reproduces gets splashed back up on the plant. That's why the Rose Society is always telling you, oh, rake up all the leaves, get all the leaves out from under your roses. Yeah, it's like, who has time to get all the leaves out from underneath the plants? If you will simply do 3 or 4 times a year, if you get some whole ground cornmeal and just go sprinkle 2 or 3 cups of it on the ground underneath your roses, you'll reduce your black spot problems by at least 80%, and many times you'll eliminate them completely.
That's after the compost?
That's on top, yes. Actually can be mixed because the fungus is going to grow all through the compost.
I have a question because I did buy a bag. In fact, I bought another bag this morning. But on one side of the bag, it says it's safe for pets and dogs. On the other side of the bag, it says, watch it, So
well,
what do I have a dog that will eat or lick anything.
The problem with anything that has corn in it is you can get a seriously poisonous disease in effect growing in the corn called aflatoxin. And I would not want my dogs eating any cornmeal, including cornmeal that came from the store. A little bit's not going to hurt anything, but it'd be best if you keep your puppies out of the cornmeal.
So don't use it on the roses in the backyard, but what about the front, which is not fenced?
Mm-hmm.
Of course, there's
No, you're not going
cats
to have.
out the kazoo.
Yeah, you're not going to have anything come in and eat
Okay.
it. And if in doubt, mix a little cayenne pepper with it, and the dogs will leave it alone.
Well, I don't have dogs, it's cats in the front yard.
Yeah. Okay, now I'm going to tell you what you can do to avoid that ever being a problem. It means maybe you can't put it on the ground, like would be a big help. But if you want to get the benefit of cornmeal but not use the cornmeal itself, what you do is take some of that cornmeal and soak it in water. Take an old sock, an old pair of pantyhose, whatever, put a cup or so of cornmeal down in the toe, stick it in a bucket of water and let it soak for a day or so. Now you've got what we refer to as corn water tea, and you've got all the benefits from that fungus in the liquid. That is as good a spray as you could use anywhere, or you can dump it on the ground and get basically the same effect that you would get by sprinkling the cornmeal out there. Yes, sir.
Could you make that with your compost tea at the same time? Or you got aflatoxin to deal with?
It's not that you'd have aflatoxin, but your compost tea, you know how we talked about keeping it actively bubbling and everything else, that would be harmful to the trichoderma. It grows because it's a long filamentous thing that would get broken up. So you're better to make your corn water tea separately and not agitate the water there. Just let it soak and then either spray or pour it. But that is an excellent, fungus controller. And if you have any black spots show up on the leaves, you can soak some cornmeal and spray or dump that water over them, and normally it'll take care of it completely.
You spray it then, not...
On the ground I pour it on. On the
okay.
foliage I probably spray it. Now if you want to buy something that controls fungus, neem, if you want to buy a safe fungicide, neem is both an insecticide and a fungicide. And if you get aphid problems for some of the insects we'll talk about in a minute, you want to do one spray that does everything. Neem is made from the seeds of an Indian tree, and it's very, very safe. It stinks, but it's very, very safe. Okay, the other way that you can...
One more question
Yeah.
about cornmeal. When you were saying you were pouring it into things, and it's strictly fungi.
Mhm.
I have been potting plants, and they get the little flies all over the place. Would that stuff help?
Not really.
DI?
The flies that are coming out of your soil are called fungus gnats, and you're keeping the soil a little too wet. If you let the soil get drier, you won't have fungus gnat problems.
Any way to get rid of them once they're in there?
If you really want to get rid of them once they're in there, other than just drying the soil out, the mosquito dunks that have that bacteria that kills mosquito larvae,
The little tablets?
yeah, that same bacteria kills the larvae of the fungus gnat. And you can take your mosquito dunk that you'd be throwing in the bird bath or water pond or whatever, soak that in water and use that water to water, and you'll kill the fungus gnats that are in there.
Sometimes it's in houseplants.
Yeah, yeah, but you're keeping your houseplants a little too wet. But if you want to get rid of the fungus gnats, soak your mosquito dunks and water with that in order to have fungus gnats.
Thank you.
Okay, a different way to go after fungus problems on the leaves is to put something on the leaf which encourages so many beneficial fungi which you can't see, that they literally so coat the leaf with good fungus that the bad fungus can't ever get started. Products that contain garlic, like the garlic pepper tea or any of the garlic sprays, are great fungus preventers that if you spray periodically help keep the fungus from ever getting started. The compost tea that we talked about last week, spraying that on the leaves of your plants. And many times what it does is simply encourages so many beneficial fungi that there's no room for the bad guys. But now, as I said earlier, some varieties of roses are much more susceptible to black spot than others. But don't panic if you have black spot, and don't panic if you're buying a rose and you find a little black spot on it. That's normal. Black spot occurs literally on everything. But on good healthy roses, it's really not that much of a threat to the health of the plant. The plant simply drops a few leaves, puts on a bunch of new growth, and that's